Hello, crypto knowledge sponges! We are back with another dose of your weekly insight into the world we live in called the Cryptoverse. Welcome to the 6th episode of the Inside Crypto podcast. This episode was recorded on September 1st, 2021. Today we are joined by Chris Khan, a senior product manager here at Amun who has been involved in the crypto world for a number of years now. Today our topic is NFTs and why they are eating my gas money. Can I get that back, please? But in all seriousness, this has been one hell of an episode. We go on quite a few divergent paths, places that you will find deeply interesting. I found them fascinating as a crypto noob. Chris answers questions like why are NFTs so popular, how can you get into them, and what hopes he has for them and where they're going in the future. We end off the show talking about that fake Banksy that happened this week, how companies can leverage NFTs and gaming's use for them. Thanks everyone for listening, and don't forget to tune in next week where we interview another member of the Amun team and get their insights into this fascinating, awesome, wonderful world of crypto. Hello all you crypto loving people, welcome back to the 6th episode of our Inside Crypto podcast. It's Korean as usual, and today I'm lucky to be joined by another very knowledgeable member of the Amun team, Chris Khan. He's a senior product manager. Beyond all of that, he just knows a ton about crypto, and he's done some preparation for today, which is really awesome. Today, you're going to be talking about it because it's been all over the news this week, NFTs. As usual, before we get into anything too detailed, we've got to go over some introductions. But I've got to plug our website as well, so please head over to www.amun.com. You can read about our products, DFI and DMX there. You can also buy the tokens. If you have any feedback about today's episode, if you want to ask Chris a question or ask anybody at Amun a question, you can email me, korean@amun.com. Because it's just Chris today, we're going to have a little bit more time introducing each other and asking questions. So, Chris, tell us about yourself. How did you get into crypto? Where did your journey start?
Yeah, Korean, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is actually my first podcast, which is shocking for a guy who likes to talk as much as I do. So, just by way of introduction for everybody watching or listening at home, my name is Chris. I work at Amun. I'm a product manager here, like Korean mentioned, and I've been in crypto for probably about 7 years now. So maybe longer, to be honest, depending on what month I got in. Basically, around the time of the Mt. Gox hack, I got really interested in Bitcoin a little bit before. Didn't buy, but I bought after the Mt. Gox hack. So Bitcoin had gone down to, if memory serves correctly, something like $175. So I scrounged together all the money that I had saved at the time, which wasn't much because I pretty much lost my life savings when I was 19, which isn't the worst thing in the world because, you got time to make it back, right? But I lost my life savings when I was 19 trading on margin. So I never trade on margin, never use any leverage. And I will say the amount of money that I've saved not trading on margin due to that learning experience has far outweighed the money that I lost when I was 19. So I bought Bitcoin with what I had. I wound up getting into Ethereum shortly thereafter that. So I went to Sibos, which is a conference full of all guys in suits, mostly talking about finance. And they had a small cryptocurrency segment. And I wouldn't even call it cryptocurrency. It was a Bitcoin segment because back then there was nothing else besides Bitcoin, right? So I remember vividly, Vitalik was speaking at that conference, and he came on he came on stage. If memory serves correctly, he came on stage with a skateboard to some Skrillex, some house music, and started talking about Ethereum. And I was like, Jesus, I don't know who this guy is, but whatever he is selling, I am buying. Lo and behold, I did not indeed buy the Ethereum pre-sale or ICO because back then nobody knew anything about ICOs and it wasn't really being covered anywhere. So by the time I found Ether, I had quote unquote missed the boat and I bought in at 88 cents. So, and then of course I started buying more and more. And by the time it hit double digits, I stopped buying and I just kept holding. So when I started working in the financial industry, I basically gravitated towards exclusively fintech. So we had a team at the company I was working for at the time that focused exclusively on blockchains. And as we know now, and as I was saying back then, and if anybody who used to work with me in 2015, 2016, 2017 thought I was insufferable back then, think about how insufferable I am now to tell you that I was right and you were wrong, and that enterprise blockchains were basically all a farce. So there's some companies doing some good stuff in the enterprise space, but they're not blockchains. And using that phrase blockchain was just a way to garner a bunch of attention and venture capital money. And if they just put all that money into crypto instead, I think things would be a little different. So that is my story of how I got to, sort of where I am. I eventually wound up at Amun. I started here about 8 months ago, right at the top of the year. And that was a very interesting time for NFTs. So we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here. I'm a big crypto bull, even in bear market times. I'm a perma bull, and we could talk a little bit later about whether I think we're in a super cycle or not, and why this run is different than previous runs that I've seen over the past 7 years.
Oh, that's a fantastic introduction. I want to ask you a question. So you've bought and you've held crypto. Why have you never mined or set up mining machines? Or is it just, I imagine you're a pretty technical person knowing your programming background, but why have you never mined?
It's a good question. So there was a very small window where mining was profitable for people without specialized equipment. The only way that you really make money mining is if you have specialized equipment and you have either discounted or free electricity. So that's why you hear stories about people setting up mining machines like in an office somewhere where they're not paying the electricity, right? Because usually the amount of money you would make mining will be offset by the cost of the electricity. Funny enough, I thought about doing it years ago at my parents' apartments. My parents live in a co-op, and for those of you who don't live in New York City, or I don't know if other countries, I mean, I guess I should have said America, but I don't know if other countries have similar setups. They probably do. But if you live in a co op, technically it's called a cooperative. It's an apartment where you don't actually own your apartment, you own shares in the building, and you share the electricity costs with everybody in the building. So in the summer, you leave the air conditioning on 24/7 because, who cares, right? You're not paying the electricity bill. So I thought many times about setting up mining equipment at my parents' house where they don't actually pay the electricity. They pay it, but it's distributed across everybody. But I never did it because, like I said, the only reason to make money, or the only way to really make money, is if you buy this expensive equipment up front, which depreciates extremely quickly. Usually within 6 months, it's obsolete, and you have to have discounted or free energy. And if both of those things make sense, you might make money, but then after a short period of time, the equipment's obsolete. You may have broken even, you may have made a little bit of money, then you have to go through new equipment again. That's something I was opposed to as well, just from a purely like waste perspective. I didn't want to keep buying new stuff and have to try to find a way to recycle or throw away the old stuff. So yeah, I never got into mining, and I encouraged people not to get into mining many times, where doing so probably would have been a money losing activity.
Very sound advice. I mean, especially if you're living in certain countries where electricity is expensive.
I mean, that's the reason that we saw mining operations concentrate in China for so long. It's because they had cheap energy, and a lot of other countries. There are some third world countries where people have access to their own their own deals on energy, so to speak, without trying to throw anybody under the bus. There are countries where people get away with cheap energy for whatever reason.
Yeah, we get. I think when I average it out here, we pay 4 cents per kilowatt American cents here in Taiwan, so pretty decent.
That's a very good deal. Oh, do you? Yeah. So is it profitable for you? I should ask you the same question.
Yeah, I mean, because I've got two rigs. I mean, two rigs in different locations, and I'm not making much per day. I mean, between the two machines, the two different locations, probably making like $16 a day in profit after you take out electricity costs. But that's not counting in probably having to replace the GPUs in about 2 years or so.
That's definitely a big part of it, the equipment depreciation. And there was a time where ant miners, I think it was between the S8 and the S9, everyone was reaching out saying, "Oh, we have S9s ready to ship," and they were all scammers because they knew that S9s were sold out for a long period of time. Or the people who weren't scamming, they would buy them in mass, front the money, then they would try to resell them for double or triple the price sometimes.
Those miners, my neighbor, he had a, is it an S, no, is it an S3? He has an Ant miner. I can't remember what version it is, but one day I came out of my apartment. I went down to where the management office is, and I saw his miner laying. It looks like it had exploded or something. From, I think that day it was like 39 degrees here, and he had forgot to put on
Oh
his air
man.
conditioning. Poor, unfortunate man.
Yes, that definitely happens. They get so hot that there are some people that I know who used to mine that they would only mine in the winter because they couldn't mine when it was too hot out. But also, a byproduct is mining in the winter, you save money on heating because you have all the energy that's being dissipated from the miners, and you have fans
Yes.
to dissipate the heat, and you have that basically blowing into into your living room or your bedroom. And you could actually use that to heat your body, which is kind of a cool unintended side effect of mining in the winter. So.
All right, before I love mining, before we get sidetracked on this, we should go on to today's topic, which is you proposed, which I thought was fantastic, given everything that happened this week and me trying to buy an NFT, getting denied because of triple gas fees. Why did you choose this topic today, Chris?
There's a couple of reasons. So I first want to make a disclaimer that I pretty much know nothing about NFTs. I also feel like after 7 years, I still know nothing about crypto. So I hope that nobody latches onto something that I say today and goes out and buys it and then loses money, then complains or emails a CEO office at Amun.com, though I don't think that's a real email address, and just complains that I should be fired essentially. But I want to talk about NFTs because of how quickly they've entered not just the crypto realm, but sort of like the cultural, the lexicon, right, of 2021. And I want to talk about, I think, socioeconomic factors that have led to NFTs really being, in a lot of ways, to sound as dramatic as humanly possible. So people listen to what I have to say after this. In a lot of ways, it's the only shot that people from my generation have at being able to buy a home because our parents' generations have completely destroyed the economy, at least in the US. I can't really talk about other countries, but I'll
Taiwan's
try
the
my best
same.
to make this as yeah. And I want to cover just what I've seen in my travels and in different places I've lived and where prices are kind of going on various assets and talk about why I think this generational wealth shift, and it's more than just that. I want to talk about more than just money. I want to talk about why NFTs are important and have cultural significance and cultural impact, and why I think a lot of them are actually quite cool, though I think probably 95% of them are garbage. So let me preface it with that. But I also want to talk about the socioeconomic implications and ramifications that it'll have on the rest of the financial markets.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start with what is an NFT, though I will say that if you want to learn about what an NFT is, why it's like what makes it non-fungible versus a traditional token, it's probably better to just look that up. It's probably not the best use of our time today to go over that kind of stuff, but just in short, a non-fungible token is a token that is not fungible. And that means that if you have one ether and you send it to an address with one ether, you now have two ether. If you have an NFT and you send it to an address with another NFT, you have two completely separate, distinct NFTs. Most NFTs by nature are not divisible. I say most because there is a new Ethereum standard that allows you to actually break NFTs down, which is kind of cool. And I think that will not only increase the amount of people buying NFTs, but it will also increase the prices of a lot of these assets. But for the most part, NFTs are not divisible. So they're discrete tokens. And contrary to popular belief, the tokens themselves do not contain photographs or videos or songs or anything. It's just a token. It's a pointer. It's a token that says, see that thing over there? I own that. And for the most part, if you own an NFT, you own whatever it's pointing to, right? If you own a CryptoPunk, you own that image of a CryptoPunk, and you could use that as, I mean, as of now, people are really just using it for their profile picture on Twitter. But as of yesterday, the team behind CryptoPunks and Autoglyphs and Meebits, which is a team called Larva Labs, they signed a deal with UTA, which is a really big talent agency. And I guess there's going to be some sort of application where they're including punks in media and entertainment. And my guess is the royalties would have to go to the owner of the punk. I mean, if you bought an alien for $7.5 million, or you bought a zombie for $5.5 million, if it's used in a movie, then you should probably get some money for that. So just in short, that's what an NFT is. It's a non-fungible token. Most of them, the vast majority of them, are ERC-721 tokens on Ethereum. But lately, and this is what I want to talk about today, and what I think most of the stuff that you see online, and if God forbid you watch like random people with 20 followers on YouTube talking about crypto, they're probably just talking about Ethereum NFTs. But I also want to talk a little bit about Solana NFTs and why I think those are going to be a game changer in in so many ways.
Hey, let's head straight into Solana NFTs because that is something that I find interesting as well. We were just talking about it earlier, David and Ronald and I.
Before we talk about Solana NFTs, we should talk about Ethereum NFTs and maybe even talk about Bitcoin NFTs. So I don't want to go that far back. But the original NFT, and by the way, I have a bunch of these. The original NFTs were something called Rare Pepes, and they were on Bitcoin, or technically they were on something called Counterparty. And they were an application of something that people at the time were calling colored coins. The idea behind a colored coin was you could take a Bitcoin and you could use one of the fields. I think it was the OP return field, and you could basically say in that field what the pointer was, right? You could put a hash of something. You could say like this is the deeds of my house or whatever. I mean, you have to obviously find a way to do it, but you would use that field to say that this represents something other than what it is. The problem that people foresaw, which is clever that they foresaw this because this is why it wouldn't have worked, is because Bitcoins are all fungible. You have an issue where if you said, okay, this Bitcoin, I'm talking about 2014, let's say this Bitcoin one Bitcoin, which was like $100, $200 at the time. This one Bitcoin represents my Honda Civic. Okay. So in 2014, you have one Bitcoin, it's worth $175, $150, and it is a 2014 Honda Civic that you paid $22,000 for. Fast forward 7 years, one Bitcoin is worth, give or take, $50,000, and a 2014 Honda Civic is maybe worth $5,000. So you could probably see the kind of issue you run into with that, and that's why that didn't work. So on Ethereum, this new standard of ERC 721 was interesting for a few reasons. Now, obviously, ERC20s are also, can also take on a life of their own, have their own value. ERC20 tokens are not in any way tied to the value of Ethereum or of Ether, though I guess we could make arguments that Ether is really just an index fund of ERC20 tokens. But ERC 721 tokens are specifically made to be these customized non-fungible tokens. It's a standard, and in fact, some NFTs predate ERC 721. Some standards or some tokens, including Mooncats, and I think maybe even CryptoPunks, but definitely Mooncats and some of the other early ones, Curio cards, they predated ERC 721. So you had to upgrade them. You had to use something called a wrapper, or Mooncats are calling it acclimator, to be able to do anything with these tokens. So all this is to say that NFTs are really complicated, and in a lot of ways, the platforms that people were using to issue, buy, sell, trade, whatever NFTs were platforms that weren't really purpose built for them. Now, I'm not saying Solana was purpose built for NFTs. Let's talk about gas for a second. For those listening, if you've ever used Ethereum during times of high congestion, you may have noticed that a swap on Uniswap will cost you $500. You may have noticed that even sending ETH, because ERC20s are more expensive to send than it is to send ETH, but even sending ETH sometimes will cost you $50. That's not really a great user experience, especially in the context of DeFi and NFTs and inclusion, right? And access, democratized access for all. So what we're seeing right now, and we saw this a few months ago, and people were buying all these dog-related coins. Like I don't want to even name them. I don't even want to give them the time of day. But it was probably the worst thing I've ever seen in crypto, because people that I had respect for were texting friends of mine saying, "Buy this new dog coin. Go onto Uniswap and punch in the token address, because it's not listed on Uniswap, but Uniswap is obviously decentralized. So punch in this address and buy as much of this coin as you can, and who knows, maybe it'll go up by 10,000x." It was probably the worst thing I'd ever seen in crypto. And for every person that I heard was making money on one of these coins, I just knew that someone on the other end was losing money, because these coins were going to stay up forever. So if you ever made any transactions during that time, gas was sky high, and gas is still sky high. We thought EIP 1559 would kind of save everyone gas fees, but I don't know why people thought that, to be honest. I didn't really think that was going to work. We've seen the exact opposite happen. But the one thing that's nice is deflation. So back to your question about Solana NFTs. Solana NFTs are interesting for a few reasons. One, Solana is super cheap on gas. So issuing an NFT costs like 0.01 Sol. If you use Phantom, which you kind of have to, Phantom is the MetaMask equivalent for Solana, you don't have this pop-up that says suggested gas fee, and then you could bump it up or bump it down, which is all you're seeing in Ethereum. All you're seeing in Ethereum is people want to buy an NFT. They just bump the gas fee up to a couple $1,000s. They buy 10 or 20 of them at a time, and then next thing you know, everyone's paying. It's a prisoner's dilemma, right? If you don't pay the high gas fee, you don't get the NFT. But if you bump up the gas fee and everyone else bumps up the gas fee, you're all worse off, but you did it anyway because you got the NFT. With Solana, you have really low gas fees, and you have another thing that Ethereum doesn't have, which is super fast transaction times. So Solana boasts somewhere, depending on who you believe, 50 to 70,000 transactions per second, which is crazy. That's more than Visa, which I think does 40,000 transactions per second. So it's pretty fast. It's so fast that most of the Solana NFT drops are selling out in like 5 seconds. Because what happens is, as soon as the website goes live, depending on how fast your internet connection is, it'll say, don't refresh the page, wait for the mint button to appear. You'll see the mint button. You'll click it. At the same time as 50,000 people or 100,000 people, there was a sale yesterday that had 50,000 people on the site at launch time for 10,000 NFTs, assuming everybody wanted 5. You have basically 10,000 slots for 250,000, 10,000 of supply for 250,000 demand, and it sold out in 5 seconds. And that's one of the downsides of Solana being so fast. The sale just went so quickly. As quickly as you could click the button, the sale went. One thing they're doing to combat people just basically buying the whole sale, is they're limiting it to one per transaction. So unlike Ethereum, where if something is zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.2 ETH and you want to buy 10 of them, you just send 1 or 2 ETH plus a big gas fee. On Sol, the gas fees are so low anyway that you just click mint, you pay the infinitesimally small gas fee plus whatever the mint fee is, whether it's 5 ETH or 5 Sol or 6 Sol, which is what we're more or less seeing these days. And then there you go, you have your NFT. So if we really believe that NFTs are now, again, I don't want to just talk about money, but if we believe NFTs are just a way of people to redistribute wealth, then maybe you want to use a platform with low gas fees. But the most important thing right now is Ethereum really even usable? And in a lot of ways, no, it's not. And this is someone who's been holding Ether for 7 years, it still has Ether. And I wear an Ethereum necklace around my neck, actually, which I don't know if I should show this on camera, but I have an Ethereum necklace around my neck.
That's so cool.
Is Ethereum really usable? And these days it's not. We were about to airdrop tokens for those of you who have bought DFI or DMX, shameless plug, and held for 30 days. We give users, the promotion's ended now, but we were giving users the opportunity to spin a wheel to win a prize. And then we were airdropping them that prize. The airdrop yesterday, to airdrop, several $100 of prizes, was going to cost us $12,000 in Ether.
Whoa.
And Ethereum's come to the point where it's almost unusable. And I think most of it is because of the NFT activity. People have crazy amounts of money they're willing to spend. And the market is driven so much by FOMO, fear of missing out, for those who aren't familiar with the term, this exuberance and euphoria that comes when everybody's making money so quickly, that you see people who are willing to just spend literally anything in terms of the price and in terms of the gas as well. And that's why I think we're going to see the activity for NFTs, majority of activity for NFTs, probably stay on Ethereum. I don't want to say it'll shift to Solana, but the new people coming in, I think are gonna use Solana. Because one of the problems you're seeing is, to make money on NFTs, you can't buy something for $5. There was a time and a place for that, but right now the really big returns are buying something at mint and either flipping it immediately or holding it, and who knows what's going to go up. Or in the Ethereum world, you got to really spend like a couple $1,000s on something to make money. I mean, from the time that CryptoPunks were minted, for maybe 3.5 years from them, they never traded really for more than a couple $100s. I mean, maybe a couple of them would trade for in the low thousands, but for the first few years, if I'm not mistaken, they really weren't trading for much of anything. And then early this year, they started to explode, and you saw them trading for 20 to 25 ETH, which at the time was like $40,000 to $50,000. A bunch of people I know were buying them. I incorrectly said that I didn't see the price going up 10x from there, so I didn't want to buy any. And lo and behold, what happened? Well, the price did go down first to 11 or 12 ETH, which again at the time was about $25,000. And then now the floor, it went all the way up to 140 ETH, and now it's around 110 ETH, which is still about 350-ish thousand US dollars, which is crazy. But if you think you're going to make 10x from here on something that's already $350,000, I don't know. Maybe you will, but am I the person to recommend you do that? Definitely not.
I've got a bunch of questions. I got to apologize to listeners as well, because usually I ask questions, but oh my God, you're just filled with so much interesting information. I just want to listen and absorb it all, especially after this week, me failing to buy an NFT. So if you're watching the video and if you're not listening to the podcast, right, you get to see I took the largest sales of CryptoPunks, and you can see them on the video at the moment in the center. If you're watching the podcast, you should definitely go and watch the video at a later date. So Chris, my question is, lots of people, regular people with some money, maybe a little bit of money, is it possible for them to get into NFTs on Solana with a little bit of money, or are we still talking $100, $200, $300?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So there was a very high profile sale yesterday for something called Aurora. And this was the one I mentioned where there were 50,000 people on the site all trying to buy 10,000 NFTs. And the price was supposed to be 5 Sol, which at the time was around $600. Because of a bug in the smart contract, the price was actually only 1 Sol. So people wanted buying these things for like $110. And then because they sold out so quickly and they were in such high demand, when they were relisted or when they were listed for the first time on a secondary market, the floor price was about 60 or 70 Sol, which is about 7,000, 8,000 US dollars.
God.
So I have a friend who got very lucky. It's funny, this guy, really good friend of mine, but in a lot of ways, luckiest man in the world meeting me, because he bought Ether under $2. with me. He bought Sol under $3 with me. And then he bought an NFT yesterday that I told him about. He literally spent 5 seconds, clicked, happened to get one. I didn't get any, by the way. I tried my best, didn't get any. And then lo and behold, 5 hours later, his $100 is now worth $8,000. But to answer your question of can people get into NFTs with a little bit of money, the answer is on Sol, probably. I anticipate that there will be NFTs selling on Sol. I mean, I could only hope because there's such a market demand for it. People really want to buy 10, 20, $30 NFTs because not everybody has hundreds or thousands of dollars to drop on NFTs. Now the problem is on Ethereum, it's impossible. Even if you want to issue NFTs to people for free, because a lot of platforms do this, by the way. When I minted, was it Mooncats that was free or Curio cards? I think Mooncats were either free to mint or the fee was negligible. For Curio cards, actually, I think the fee was 0.0025 ETH, which in 2017 when they launched them was really nothing. But even earlier this year, I mean, what's that? That was like maybe $6 or $7, and now they're going for $8,000, $10,000 a piece. And I'm the idiot who sold 50 of them, before the price hit 2 to 3 ETH a piece. But anyway, on Ethereum, it's pretty much impossible to buy cheap NFTs because even if it's free, from the perspective of the company issuing them isn't taking any money, the network is taking all your money. And a simple mint, because the smart contracts are fairly complex, even for the simplest of mints, you're looking at, with current gas prices, maybe even more, but usually at least a couple $100s. Sometimes you'll get lucky and be able to do a mint for $50, but it really depends on the complexity of the smart contract, and it depends on the price of gas. When I checked this morning, gas was at 60 Gwei. Yesterday it was over 200 Gwei. There was a time a couple of days ago where it was 2,000 Gwei. So using the network, it's a supply and demand thing. You're driving on the highway, or the analogy is like you're in New York City, right? You want to get to Manhattan from Brooklyn. You can take the Brooklyn Bridge and it's free. You could just wait on the queue for an hour, or you can take the Battery Tunnel, which is like $9. The problem is with Ethereum, everybody wants to take the Battery Tunnel, right? So there's another, fictitious tunnel, right, where people are just spending hundreds of dollars to get through, and that's what we're seeing on Ethereum. So I think the best bet for cheap NFTs is on Solana. There really isn't much else of an option on Ethereum, and I think we're going to see the sort of high tier of NFTs, the Giffen goods, price inelastic NFTs that people are always going to want. Perhaps CryptoPunks will be up there, art blocks. I mean, I don't want to make, I have a list in my head of what I think will survive, but like I said, I think 95% of these people will not be able to sell them for what they paid for them, probably in a few months' time, maybe 6 months tops. But the other 5% that are going to make it, whether it's 1% or 5% or 10%, somewhere in that realm, those that make it, they'll probably be on Ethereum. Ethereum has proven itself to be the gold standard for NFTs. Before Solana was really kind of in the common parlance, there were NFTs on Binance Chain, but nobody cared. Nobody bought any NFTs on Binance. And I think it's very telling. People have decided that Ethereum is the chain to be on. And every time I hear of a new chain that's faster and cheaper than Ethereum, I say, who cares? Right? We've been hearing this for 7 years. Oh, it's faster, it's cheaper. But has anybody actually cared? I mean, look at Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. I'll always love Bitcoin. There are things about it that I don't like. Do I think it should be $50 to $100 to send a Bitcoin transaction? I used to think no, but now I think yes. Because at the time, I wanted to use Bitcoin to pay for coffee. Now that's just an analogy. I never wanted to actually use it to pay for coffee. But I used it on Purse.io to make Amazon purchases. And I remember spending zero point 0.1 Bitcoin on a keyboard cover for my Mac. I mean, zero point 0.1 Bitcoin today is $5,000. Back then, 0.1
Wow.
Bitcoin was $20, right? But at the time, you could do that because the transaction fees were, they were still not great. But what you do is you preload your Purse account, and then anyway, there's a way to do it where it's not. The way they do it is they actually move the money on their own database. They're not actually doing a transaction every time you make a purchase. They're just doing a transaction when you want to deposit or withdraw. So kind of like the way an exchange would do it. But as time went on, as I digress, as time went on, people looked at Bitcoin less as a way to make payments and more as a digital store of value. And I'm a big believer that if Bitcoin is digital gold, Ether is digital oil, right? Oil is something that you use for a variety of industries. Use it to heat your home, use it to power your car, use it to power factories that make widgets that make pens and pencils and computers. So oil is multi-purpose. Gold, yes, you use it for some things. Everybody has a little bit of gold. Everybody has some gold jewelry. gold exists in our phones, so there are uses for it, but it's not arguably not as useful as oil, right? And of course, you have gold bugs like Peter Schiff who are always going to say, "Oh, you need gold because you use it to make iPhones." Well, okay, while that may be true, Peter, are you making iPhones? Are you making jewelry? Are you making gold bracelets? No, you're buying gold and you're holding it, and you're buying it because you think that later you or your children or your grandchildren will be able to sell it to someone else for a higher price than you paid for it. That's fine. I'm not here to tell people that they can't or shouldn't be making money. That's not my place. But the problem that I have is when people get, disingenuous over their motives and sound holier than thou by saying, "Oh, I won't buy this because of this." And we're seeing the same thing with NFTs. We're seeing people who are choosing being right over making money. And if you want to take that route, be my guest. But as my friends at CMS Holdings say, do you want to make money or do you want to be right? You could be right. You could say they're just JPEGs. Oh, it's just money laundering. Oh, it's just wash trading. And I don't believe either of those, by the way. If anyone actually knew how expensive it would be to wash trade NFTs back and forth, they wouldn't be saying this. And by the way, people said the same thing about Bitcoin in 2013, 2014, 2015. Oh, it's wash trading. It's money laundering. I mean, it would be really foolish to try to money launder using crypto because as everybody knows now, all the transactions are recorded on a fully public append only ledger. But
Exactly.
back to the point about NFTs, people are saying, "Oh, it's a get rich quick scheme." One of my friends, the same friend I mentioned before, his partner went to their financial advisor yesterday and mentioned that he'd been doing crypto, and the guy said, "No, no, no, you shouldn't be touching any of that stuff." And he made some sort of analogy about like buying, I don't know, something about buying monkeys from I have no idea. And then he said it's like a get rich quick scheme. And what I told my friend to say next time he sees this financial advisor, if he ever indeed meets the guy himself, is if I've been holding something for 7 years, I don't think it's a get rich quick scheme. Okay. Just because the returns are outsized compared to the rest of the market, you can say the same thing about Apple or Tesla. I mean, I was a Tesla bull before Tesla bulls existed. I mean, $30 pre stock split. And anybody who would say that that was like a get rich quick scheme after holding the stock for multiple years just doesn't get it. They don't understand value creation. So I want to stick to NFTs because I know I like to go on tangents, and I don't want to go on way too many tangents. So what else would you like to cover? Do you want to talk about the applications of NFTs? Do you want to talk about staying power?
I do have a question regarding Ethereum. So, I'm a big fan of Ethereum. Ethereum was what got me started mining and into cryptocurrency. But, with gas fees, with sort of this negative reaction towards gas fees and that sort of stuff, why haven't more people said, okay, I'm done. I hate this network. I'm moving to Cardano. I'm moving to Solana. I'm moving to whatever it is people like. Everyone has their own thing that they like. I always argue for Ethereum, because that was what got me started. But at the same time, having that such a bad experience trying to buy like a simple, cute little NFT for $15 and having to pay triple, quadruple the price in gas, I'm like, come on, Ethereum. I love you so much. What have you done to me?
Yeah, so before I answer that, I'll say that anybody thinking that they could use Cardano for anything is is wrong and should reassess their priorities. But to answer your question more directly, why do people not go to cheaper networks? What we've seen is Ethereum has an incredible amount of staying power. Like I said before, no one cares about these for the most part. We're really seeing the first real contender in Solana. I'm a big Solana fan, like I said. I got it below $3 thanks to the same guy who got me into Bitcoin, by the way. So, big shout out to him. What we're seeing is the first time an actual contender to Ethereum. Up until now, no one's really cared about any of the contenders because Ethereum has such a big community of developers, applications, people who can code in Solidity. It's not really the hardest language to learn. It's quite similar to like a JavaScript or a Python in terms of difficulty. It's not like on Solana where you have to learn Rust, which is really similar to C++, which is something that people aren't really learning as much in school these days as maybe they were 20 years ago. So what we see with Ethereum is an incredible amount of staying power, and it's, really a brand name, right? Unlike Bitcoin that has no leader, though I have my own guesses, which I think are well informed on who Satoshi might be. Ethereum has Vitalik, and he goes around the country, the world really, with a duffel bag that is rumored to hold all of his worldly possessions in, by the way, in this duffel bag. He wears Hello Kitty t-shirts, right? And he's just this brilliant, eccentric, like crazy person who was a Bitcoin bull at first, by the way. He started, Bitcoin magazine, and I think he was like 17 or 18 when he started kind of like tinkering around with what eventually would become Ethereum. I think he was, I mean, gosh, all these years of blending together, but he was quite young when, I don't want to say the exact age and be wrong, but he was quite young when he started tinkering with what would eventually become Ethereum. And the brand that he's built around it and the applications that are on it now, I mean, you look at things like Uniswap and SushiSwap, you look at all of the DeFi applications, you look at the early NFTs, and it's hard to quantify. It's one of those things where people like Ethereum, even if something's cheaper and faster. That's not enough to get somebody off. And I think the reason for that is we say a lot in the product world, which I haven't talked at all about my day job, which is kind of nice to have a little break from it every now and then. What we say in the product world is for somebody to switch to a new product, it needs to be 10 times better. It can't be 2 times better or 3 times better. I'm a big believer in that. I mean, I buy lots of cars. I like cars. And I'm at a point now with the car that I have that I really like it, and I'm not going to get another car unless I think something is 10 times better, at least in some way, right? I think we're seeing the same thing in crypto land, where nothing is 10 times better than Ethereum, even if something you want to argue is 2 times better or 3 times better, right? I don't think that's enough to get people to switch just because of the staying power that it has and the huge network effect that it has.
That makes total sense, and it's also a little bit comforting for me to hear that as well, as a big Ethereum fan. Okay, I know you have got to go relatively sooner, so let's dive straight into the news, and I want to get your final thoughts, summarizing everything up towards the end, and then so you can have a little bit of break before your next meeting. So we just talked about the news just before the podcast, so the first bit of news is out of is from The Verge by Mitchell Clark, published yesterday, August 31st, 2021. Someone paid $300,000 for a fake Banksy NFT and the scammer gave it all back. I mean, what do you think about that? Is that a worry for somebody who's buying an NFT? Is like, is this legitimate? How do I not get scammed? How do people be safe when they're buying NFTs?
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about here. So, and I don't need to talk too much about the article because if people want to read it, they can read it. But essentially, what happened is somebody thought they were buying a Banksy because Banksy is anonymous. I mean, there are ways to verify that an anonymous person is indeed the person behind something. And there was a time a few years ago, I mean, I live in New York City, and there was a time a few years ago where there was a stand by Central Park selling Banksy esque, like small square Banksy esque spray painted canvases. And a bunch of people bought them, not thinking anything of them, not thinking it was Banksy. And the next day, Banksy from his official channels, Twitter, Instagram, or something, said, "By the way, that was me. I hired that guy to sell these things." And they were selling them for $20 or $50 a piece. Lo and behold, original Banksys are worth, I mean, those ones I think were going at the time for $15,000 or $20,000. So pretty good
Oof.
return overnight, right? So there are ways to verify that something is indeed authentic, even if you're anonymous. The problem in NFT land and in crypto land in general is the upside for hacking, unfortunately, is quite high, and the downside is actually quite low. So a lot of people who hack, they can do it anonymous. I mean, they do it anonymously. They use fresh wallets. They I don't want to encourage any of this type of behavior, obviously, but there are applications out there that help you kind of move funds around in ways that are a little less traceable than the blockchain would traditionally allow you to go back and see. So in the NFT world, what we're seeing is people want to get in on things. They act very quickly, and sometimes they act without thinking. And as a result, they lose lots of money. So there are a couple of ways this happens. So one is you have this like peer-to-peer scam. You have someone reaching out. They actually reached out to a guy called Pranksy, who's a very well-known figure in the NFT space, offered him this piece. He wound up buying it. So that's a very simple social engineering attack, right? Someone convinces you that they're somebody that they're not. One of the most common cases of social engineering is somebody calls up your phone company and says, "Hey, it's Korean." They say, "Oh, like Korean, what's the address you have in file?" Then Korean can go, fake Korean can go, "Oh, well, I have 6 addresses. I'm really in a rush now." And by the time you try this 10 times, you'll get to somebody who doesn't care and will do the SIM swap, right, or something awful, and then next thing you know, people are starting to try to hack into your accounts. So social engineering is extremely prevalent in crypto. As a result, you shouldn't use your real phone number for anything ever, except for personal friends. You definitely shouldn't ever use your real phone number or any phone number for two-factor authentication. You should always use something like Google Authenticator, or I use something called free OTP. I'm comfortable saying that because it's these are types of things that I'd recommend to anybody. I recommend it to my family and my closest friends. Another thing about scams in the NFT world and in crypto in general, the reason I say the downside is so low is you can't get the money back. As everybody knows by now, crypto transactions are irreversible. And we saw something happen the other day with another a couple of prominent folks actually in the NFT space, where they were having issues with OpenSea, which for those who don't know it's like the number one by far NFT marketplace on Ethereum. People were having issues with OpenSea. They went on Discord, and somebody invited them into a support group, like a not support group like people crying and complaining about their problems, but a support group like support issues. And a few individuals were purporting to be members of the leadership team of OpenSea, and I guess this guy thought, oh well, I'm a high profile guy, so why wouldn't I be talking to the CEO or COO or whatever of OpenSea? And he got duped. And what they said was, oh, you have to resync your MetaMask, open up MetaMask, and click this button here. And there's a big warning that says, like, don't click this because it will reveal your private key to anybody.
Yes.
And then when you do click it, there's another message that says, make sure no one's looking at your screen. This is your private key. But still people do it. And another issue that people have is a lot of people use the same address for all sorts of things. I know someone who started, oh gosh, I don't want to out anybody, but when someone's prominent in the NFT space, you like to see what types of NFTs they have. There's nothing wrong with that. So I was scrolling through somebody's wallet, somebody I know, and it's the same wallet he used to buy meme coins in February or March. And some of these coins were had names that I are probably not appropriate for me to say on a podcast that I would hope is family friendly. So just word to the wise, always use a fresh address for everything, just for not for any illegal purposes, obviously, but just to keep a little bit of privacy in case somebody's trying to scam you or stalk you. You definitely want to keep no links, if possible, between any of your wallets, and there are ways to do that without paying a ton of money or using any shady services. You just have to be really clever and really vigilant. So on that piece of news, I would say be very careful. Don't install any browser extensions that you're not 1,000% sure are the real one. A good friend of mine actually issued NFTs back in January or February of this year, and he downloaded a fake MetaMask, and somebody drained the ETH from his wallet. And then anytime any of his NFTs would be sold, all the royalties would go back to that wallet. So he had to reissue them, and yeah, he wound up losing at the time almost $10,000. As time went on, the value of those coins went up by even more. So I helped him secure his wallet, and I can only hope that doesn't happen to anybody. It's really the worst thing imaginable for someone to get into your wallet. So be very careful. There are more advanced topics we can cover, like infinite approval and whatnot, but I'll stick with that for today.
That's perfect. I mean, this is another, all our other coworkers have given lots of good security advice, and you've just added on top of that. All right, I want to we'll skip the second story. We'll go all the way to the third story because I'm a big gamer and I love games.
Yeah. And I've got a little bit of time if you want to cover both stories. So
Oh, okay.
the yeah. So which story do you want to cover first?
Of course, everyone's seeing NFTs, and why I had this article, even though, it is somewhat paywalled, is if a company or if a person who has a company is listening to this, how do companies use NFTs? Is it a point? Should companies say like there was the big story with Visa paying 150,000 and people was like, oh, this is just marketing. Should companies be getting into NFTs? Can they use it in any way? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. So this article, the Fortune article, focused on Blau, who's a DJ. He is very influential in the NFT space. He's been in, I want to say, since the beginning, though technically the beginning would imply like 5 years ago, but he got in probably late last year, early this year. And he started a company called Royal. They raised, I think, $16 million, and they are going to help creators issue NFTs that give royalties to the purchasers. So the idea, and this is something that I've long been a proponent of, I don't think the future of NFTs is random celebrity, and I've seen this by the way, random celebrity issues an edition of 10,000 of the same NFT, right? They design something, make it an image, and they issue 10,000 of them. I don't think that's the future of NFTs. I've seen even worse things, which include open editions. An open edition means I'm going to leave this open for 2 days, and however many people buy them, you all own them. I don't think that's the spirit of an NFT. I really believe an NFT, it should be one of one. If it's not one of one, it should be one of few. And if there, if it can't be one of one, if there are permutations, I think that's fine. But I think what we're seeing is people kind of migrating away from the, oh, I'll just buy the celebrity NFT. A lot of the NFTs that are doing really well are not actually celebrities or brands or necessarily well-known people in pop culture. They're really niche artists. Some of them are digital artists who have a following online, like guys like Beeple, who personally, I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of whatsoever, because um, I think what he did selling that NFT for ungodly amounts of money uh, was great. But then I think him selling all of it, all the ether for cash immediately was kind of strange, because what we're seeing is most people are actually keeping the money in the ecosystem, and he just wasn't one of those people. And he went in the press saying that he didn't like NFTs. I said, okay, do what you want, but I digress. What we're seeing is people who are digitally native artists or people who didn't have a following but come up with a clever idea and then do it anonymously. Those are the things that are selling out. As far as brands, companies, as far as Visa, I have a lot of thoughts on the Visa thing, but first and foremost, it was 100% marketing ploy. They probably had a strategy team somewhere that has a budget of $1 million a year. An intern or a first year, second year probably said, let's buy Punk for these reasons. And they did it, and they got the entire crypto world to go from saying, down with the banks, we hate banks, to saying, oh, we like Visa. Awesome. Because who cares about principles when a company is pumping your bags, right? So that's something that shows the fickleness of most of the crypto space, to be honest with you. So I think companies, besides buying NFTs for cheap marketing ploys, I think there are applications for NFTs that go far beyond artwork. I always thought NFTs should be digital representations of real world assets, like I mentioned before, title to a car, the title to a home. I like the idea of, let's say you're a huge fan of, I don't know, let's use Kygo, because I love Kygo and I went to his festival on Sunday. Let's say Kygo, and Kygo did issue NFTs a while ago, by the way, but they were just like artwork essentially, which I thought was strange considering, yes, he's an artist, but it was like digital art. It was like something that was visual, and he's a music artist. What I can envision is an NFT whereby if you own it, you are now allowed to go backstage in any of his festivals or any of his concerts. You have like certain rights and privileges. You get discounts on his clothing, you get free songs, whatever. And then what I can envision is people would buy and sell this NFT. It's a bearer instrument. If you own it, you get the perks. And then what you'll see is the price fluctuate, right? So as he gets cooler and as he has a festival coming up, the NFT price will jump right before the festival. Then right after the festival, maybe somebody will sell it and the price will go down, right? So I think those are interesting applications of NFTs. And also, and we'll talk about this in a second with the video game sort of twist on things. I think NFTs are going to be used for a long time as digital status symbols. So companies like Gucci, Louis Vuitton, whatever, I don't see why they couldn't issue. And I think I think there was a Gucci NFT in another video game. I'm not really too familiar with the video game space. I apologize, but I did hear something a few months ago about a like Gucci bag in an in NFT form in a game selling for, or it wasn't an NFT technically, but a Gucci bag in a video game. So presumably they had to license it from Gucci. They couldn't just make a Gucci bag. Was selling for more than a Gucci bag sells for in real life. So I want to talk about that in a second as well. So do you want to jump into the
Let's do
video
it.
games?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So there was this other article that will be linked from Cointelegraph about Illuvium. To be honest, I'm not too familiar with Illuvium, but uh, it's another video game with an NFT spin, and I guess it has its own token that you can invest in. So it reminds me a lot of Axie Infinity. So I don't know what the
Yes.
price is right now, but AXS was absolutely skyrocketing, and I'm sure the price will be different by the time everybody hears this podcast. There's no point in looking it up anyway. And the reason for that was I think you needed 3 AXS or something to play the game. So basically, buying the token was your ticket to playing the game, and then in the game were all these various NFT characters that you can use to play the game. And last I checked, I think Axies were number 4 over the past 7 days in NFT volume, as reported by CryptoSlam. And there are times where it goes, higher and lower, obviously. But that's a huge one. I think beyond just playing in video games, what we're seeing now is people changing their profile pictures on Twitter to their NFT of choice that they own. I mean, I did it yesterday. I finally, I was trying for so long not to do it, but I made my Twitter profile picture Degen Ape because I bought a handful of them shortly after launch. Then they started kind of, doing pretty well and entering the conversation around being like people are saying they could theoretically be the punks of Solana. You know, there are knockoff punks on Solana. I don't think those are going to take off, but DJ names could be the punks of Solana. And this is not investment advice. I happen to have a few, and there's one that I really like that has a pretty pink dress and wooden teeth, and is clamping on a band of of currency. Right? They call it dirty fiat, which is funny because that's what I call currency, physical currency or U.S. dollars as well. But this ape is clamping, biting down, teeth biting down on a stack of what I can only presume are $100 bills, and I made that my profile picture. And what we're seeing with Board Ape Yacht Club and not as much with Meebits, but anything that's like actually an avatar, like purely an avatar. So BAYC, CryptoPunks, obviously, really mostly those two, and now Degen Apes is you're seeing people making them their profile pictures, and these people could easily sell those and go out and buy a Lamborghini and drive around in them. But I think people are gravitating towards digital status symbols over real world ones. And this kind of ties in with video games because since the beginning of video game time, at least online gaming and the ability to do in app purchases, you probably couldn't do this in the 90s, but you definitely could do it like 5 or 10 years ago. We've seen people spend real money for things in the game. I remember in college, I made fun of a friend of mine because he was spending like hundreds of dollars buying upgrades in a video game to make his character look different. And I was like, oh, does that make your character faster or stronger? And he was like, no, he just looks cool. I'm like, so you spent hundreds of dollars in a video game to make your character look different? He's like, yeah. And now we're seeing people do that, but just with NFTs, where you're not just buying from the producer of the game and just making them richer, but I mean, in a lot of ways you are, but you're buying from other people. And then you could obviously sell these to other individuals if you want. I still think the biggest use case for NFTs is buying and selling. I am not yet convinced that more than 1 or 2% of the industry actually cares about NFTs and cares about anything besides the money that comes with them. And I didn't want to end the podcast on a cynical note. So I will say this a similar thing about crypto. I think a lot of people don't really care too much about the good benefits that you get from crypto, from decentralization, from DeFi, from the ability to be your own bank, be your own custodian, have full control over your money, be able to buy, sell, trade 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter where you are in the world, just from the comfort of an internet connected device. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, there was a time 30, 40 years ago where my parents' generation, for example, was in university and they could pay their way through university on a minimum wage job and then have money saved up afterwards for a down payment on a home. And I haven't looked at the numbers in a while, so these could be wrong. But at the time, the function of college tuition to median salary was not a whole number. It was less than one, right? Average tuition was a couple grand, and average income was a little higher than that. Now we're seeing college tuition being in a lot of places for private institutions at least more than the median annual income of a family in the United States. And even worse than that, you look at home prices. Home prices used to be kind of on par with a year or 2 years of salary. Now, at least in New York City, I think last I checked, the median home price was give or take $900,000, and the median income, I don't know what it is now, but last I checked, it was $40,000 to $50,000. So you're looking at basically a 20x factor, not a 2x factor. So what we're seeing is people who, didn't make as much money as people are making today. And yes, it could be because of inflation, fine. But we see people who weren't ever making like really high salaries, they were just making good salaries. They have houses that are paid off. They have pension plans, which we don't have anymore. They have 401ks, which is great, and we do have those. They have Social Security, which I read an article yesterday that the projection of when Social Security run out of money was actually just was brought forward by a year. So in America, for those who don't know, when you retire, you're given a small amount of money from Social Security. It was never meant to be a retirement plan, but in a lot of ways for a lot of elderly people. It has become one. And my generation is going to put more money into Social Security than we would ever get out, even if Social Security does not go insolvent. So what we're seeing now in crypto is a very large, I don't even want to call it a redistribution of wealth. It's not really redistribution. It's increasing the size of the pie for everybody. You're seeing people make investments in assets they believe are important or culturally significant in one way or another. And a lot of people are making life changing money off of it. And again, I don't want to just fixate on the money, but I do think that 95+% of the people who buy any asset, whether it's Apple stock, I mean, you can really say 100%, right? Unless you're counting the people who want to leave things to their kids. I don't even know if that counts. But you look at people buying Apple, Tesla, people buying gold, silver, people buying jewelry, people buying real estate, people buying crypto. Any of these assets, people are just buying them because they expect them to go up in value. There's nothing wrong with that. And the thing about crypto is it is a very self-selecting group of people who've gotten into crypto and into NFTs as a result. And this is, I think, in a lot of ways, their best shot at getting back on equal footing after our parents' generation basically destroyed the economy for us and made it impossible for most people to afford it. So, not to end on a sour note, but that's all I got for today.
A very realistic note. Thank you very much for being here as well. Let me do the intro. I've just been thinking about everything you said. My mind is sort of like not where it's supposed to be. So that's all we have time for today, folks. I and everyone at Amun really appreciate you stopping by. Please don't forget to check us out on social media. Twitter at Amun, AMUN. Telegram at Amun Tokens. Stop by Discord. Me and community manager David were always on there. We're also on Reddit, r/Amun Tokens. And don't forget to leave us a podcast review. Apple's recently changed the way they organize podcasts. So it's all algorithmic now. So it depends on reviews and how many stars you get and all that sort of stuff. So we'd really appreciate that. Chris, wow. I want to say lots of bad words to explain how much I enjoyed this podcast, but I'm not going to because, like you said, this is family friendly. We want people to learn. Thanks again for being here. Final sentence. You want to say anything about crypto NFTs?
I just want to thank everyone for listening. I encourage you to be extremely vigilant online. Don't invest any more money than you can afford to lose. Be careful with your seed. Don't ever type it in anywhere. Don't show anyone your MetaMask secret key, for the love of God. Have everything in cold storage unless you're actively trading it on an exchange, which I also wouldn't recommend because buying and holding is the best way to make money on any asset, unless you're a professional, hedge fund trader essentially. So, and I still think buying and holding is the best way to make money on any asset. So thank you so much for listening, and feel free to reach out on our Twitter account or Telegram. I'm on our Telegram, so I'd be happy to chat.
Nice. Very. Thanks again. And we will see you guys next week about the same time. And we'll see who is going to come up to bat and who's going to be on the podcast then. And see you guys later.